On November 27th, 1988, Junko Furuta was reported missing by her parents in Japan. They said that she was well behaved, so something must be wrong. The police took the report, but they were not concerned about her disappearance. Police wrote in her file, quote, "Teenage rebellions are common. She'll probably return home when she's ready," unquote. The family received a phone call from Junko. She told them that she was safe, but she ran away. Junko said that she was with a friend, and okay, but to please call off the police search? Unfortunately, they did because they thought that she was safe. Little did they know she was not safe. What would follow was a long battle for justice and disturbing details of cruelty towards their daughter. Hi, if you're new here, I discuss true crime, paranormal phenomena, cults, and history. Please like and subscribe. Hype the video. You can also tip me on Ko-fi, so eventually I can do this full time. Without further ado, let's get into today's case. This is Wicked Wednesday. Today I'm discussing the brutal torture and murder of Junko. I do want to give a warning. This case is really disturbing, but it is also very important. Junko deserves to be remembered. This is her story. Junko Furuta was born on January 18, 1971. She was born and raised in Misato, Saitama, Japan. Saitama is located in southeastern Japan, 22 miles outside of Tokyo. It was and is still considered very safe. She lived with her parents, an older and younger brother. Her father was Akira Furuta. Her family was close-knit and encouraged each other. The family was not wealthy by any means, but she had a wonderful childhood. Her father, Akira, was a business director at a cannon factory, while her mother was a stay-at-home mother, which was typical for Japan at this time. She would greet everyone, even neighbors, politely. At the time of this case, she was 17 years old. Junko was a senior at the Yashio Minami High School. She was intelligent and a very strong student. She maintained good grades and rarely missed school. She was a hard worker and worked a part-time job at a plastic molding factory beginning in October 1988. She was saving up to take a trip with her friends after they graduated. She did accept a job at an electronics retailer that she would begin after graduation. She also had dreams of becoming an idol singer. The best example of this was Baby Metal, a group that mixes traditional kawaii and heavy metal. Basically, it is a performer marketed for their personality, attractiveness, and image, rather than their vocals. Kinda like America's version of a pop star, honestly. She kept this dream sorta quiet. She also loved to bake and knit. She was well liked by her peers and instructors alike. She had a good reputation. She was never drinking or partying and no smoking. On top of her intelligence and academics, she was also really gorgeous. She was described as someone who could light up a room with her smile. Her friends referred to her as Jun-chan. Jun, translated according to Google, is pure or genuine or obedient. Then Chan is a close bond. So basically, they are calling her a good, true friend. She was also very thoughtful. If she visited her friends' homes, she always brought a gift. She just seemed like a lovely person. Junko was part of Class 38, which consisted of 47 students. They were a very close group of students. They made happy coats, which is traditional Japanese festival jackets. She began dating a boy named Kuramura. At least this is the name he uses. It might be a pseudonym to protect his privacy. He was drinking and smoking, but he quit when Junko asked him to. That's how much he respected her. He was 23 years old. I want to say that in Japan, the age of consent was 13 at the time, but has since been increased to 16. The dating rule basically is that if minors are within 5 years of each other, they can date. They began dating in 1987. They celebrated their first Valentine's Day in 1988. When Junko gave him homemade chocolate, a tradition in Japan, and he, in turn, gave her 18-karat gold necklace. She wore this daily. On November 23rd, 1988, Junko celebrated his birthday by giving him a black sweater she knitted and baked him a cheesecake. They went bowling and made plans to go skiing in the winter. On November 25th, 1988, Junko left her home at 8:30 p.m. and began riding her bike home. By 8:30 p.m., Junko was riding her bike near a park when a boy kicks her off and runs off. Another boy came to her aid and offered to walk her home, in case that boy was still around. Junko accepted his generous offer. She trusted him. He seemed so kind. That is until they arrived at a nearby warehouse. His tone changed. The boy said that he was a Yakuza member. Yakuza is an infamous gang in Japan. I read that it's comparable to the mafia. The boy told her that he would let her live if she followed his orders. She agreed because at this point, what choice does she have? She is in an abandoned warehouse in the middle of the night with a gang member. Unfortunately, he sexually assaulted her at the warehouse. Then they take a taxi to a hotel in Adachi. He proceeded to sexually assault Junko. He threatened that if she made any noise, he would kill her and her family. After the assault, he made a phone call, bragging about the assault. Early in the morning, on November 26th, he takes Junko to a park near the hotel. This is when 3 other boys were there. One of the boys was the one who pushed her off the bike. That's right, it was all a trap. Before I get into what happened, I must talk about these losers. 2 men were riding their motorcycles in Masato. They were searching for a victim to assault. They would often gang rape young women before letting them go. This is when they fortunately saw Junko, but this time they would not release her after assaulting her. So Junko left work and rode off towards her home. They see Junko alone and vulnerable. Miyano was the leader of the gang. He ordered Minato to kick Junko off her bike, then he would swoop in and pretend to help her. He is earning her trust. Then he takes her to the warehouse, intimidates her into going to a hotel, and assaults her. He called Minato's home and bragged to Ogura about the assault. He told Minato not to let Junko leave. Miyano then took Junko to the park. So who are these freaks? Hiroshi Miyano, who was 18, Joe Ogura, who was 17, Shinji Minato, who was 16, and Yasushi Watanabe, who was 17, were the main perpetrators. They all dropped out of school in the summer of 1988 and joined the Yakuza gang as Shinpera, which is a low-level gang member. They used Minato's family home as a hangout spot. They began with purse snatching, car theft, and then escalated to assault and rape. Miyano was born on April 30th, 1970 in Adachi, Japan. His father worked at a security company while his mother taught piano. So they're a respectful family, right? Well, no. His grandfather was a soldier with Yakuza connections. As I said before, Miyano was the leader of this gang. He had a troubled criminal record getting worse over time. He was known as the school bully, and he bragged about being in the Yakuza gang. He was dating Wanabe's sister, but she ended things after he joined the gang and started to commit crimes. It is often reported that Miyano went to school with Junko. He was immediately attracted to her, but she turned him down. In my research, I found that that is not true. I think it comes down to bad translations, since the bulk of information is on Japanese sites. They actually went to a different school in Tokyo and dropped out. They did not know Junko prior to the kidnapping. They did find her attractive, but rejection was not the motive. Minato was born in 1972. He was reportedly raised in a strict communist household. Despite strict rules, he joined the gang with Miyano and got into crime with them. Not much is known about these creeps, so I included what I could. On November 8th, 1988, they kidnapped a 19-year-old girl. They took her to a hotel, gang raped her, and then released her. That was their pattern until Junko. It is terrifying that the boys are so young, yet so sadistic already. If you do not know this case, it gets very bad. At the park, she realizes this was all an elaborate trap. They told her that they knew where she lived and would kill her and her family if she did not cooperate. She was then gang raped by these boys. How horrific. This is also 3 a.m., it's dark, and she is outnumbered by 4 Yakuza members. They then snuck her into the Minato's home, which is one of the most frustrating things about this case. They threatened that if she tried to escape, he would kill her and her family. Minato's family lived in the Ayase district of Adachi. From the outside, it looked like a normal family home, but inside the location where Junko would go through hell. This brings us back to Junko's family. Junko was expected to return back at 8:30 p.m. They began to worry when it was 10 and she still has not gotten home, but they thought maybe she was just running late. An hour and a half is a long time to be late, but in these situations, you start to talk yourself down. You do not want to worry. They went into panic mode once the time hit 11 and she was still not home. They called her job, but they confirmed that Junko left work on time. This made it less likely that she was running late, especially not over 2 hours. They called everyone they knew to see if anyone had seen her. They walked her a normal route, calling out for their daughter. They reached a park where Junko would walk on her route, and there they found the lock to Junko's bicycle. It was discarded close to the park. The next day, Junko's family reported her missing. This brings us back to the beginning of the investigation. The police took the report, but dismissed it as teenage rebellion. This is pretty infuriating. It was late at night when she disappeared, and she is still not home. Police truly messed this up in Junko's case, but we will get into that. When word spread that Junko was missing, the boys forced her to call her parents. It is devastating that she called her parents saying she was okay, when she obviously was not okay. She must have been terrified and defeated. I think if she had known how this case would go, she might have just asked for help. This ultimately derailed the search for her. Junko's parents are very confused by a phone call. It is very out of character for her. She also had plans. That night she was looking forward to watching the finale of her favorite show. She warned her brother, do not even dare touch the TV that night because it's mine. It was also her mother's birthday, so she was buying supplies and planning to make a strawberry cake. None of this makes sense to them. Despite that, the searches for Junko stopped because she called and was not presumably in any danger. Back at the Minato home, they forced her to call her parents. Miyano held a knife to her throat and made her call her parents, saying she ran away, that she was okay to call off the searches. The gang knew that they would get caught if the police investigated, so they thought if she convinced her parents, it would divert their attention. Unfortunately for Junko, it worked. Junko's parents knew something was off, but did not know how to convince the idiotic police. Before I begin this section of the video, I need to add a disclaimer. It gets really disturbing. I will add a timestamp if you want to skip all the disturbing details, since there are a lot. So she was held against her will for 44 days. Minato's parents were living at the house and saw her. I know what you're thinking, why did I not intervene? Junko was forced to pretend to be his girlfriend. The parents did catch on, but did not want to think their son could hurt anyone, and I think they were scared of their son, to be honest. At one point, a boy was invited over. He saw Junko's condition and was horrified, as he should be. He told his brother, who told their parents, who called the police. This is really gonna piss you off, but when the police came to the residence, Minato's parents told them that there was no girl there. The parents offered to let them look inside, but the police took them at their word. If they had gone inside, they would have saved Junko, but these dumb police officers just left. She continued to be beaten by fists, bamboo sticks, golf clubs, and even iron rods. They even hung her from the ceiling and used her as a literal punching bag. They put dumbbells on her, shattering her fingernails and bones. They poured hot wax on her face and eyelids. On November 28, Miyano and the others gang raped Junko. This is when her accomplices came into the case. 2 boys nicknamed Nakamura and Ahira engaged in the gang rape. After the assault, Miyano shaved her pubic hair and then used a match to burn her genitals. Yeah, really disgusting. If this was not messed up enough, they would try to break her down mentally. They told her that her father died in an accident. This was a flat-out lie. They also forced Junko to touch herself in front of the group, dance naked, and then stand on the balcony in the middle of the night with little clothing on. They then inserted items into her private areas, including a metal rod and a bottle. In early December, Junko attempted to escape. They were wasted, they crawled downstairs and called to the police. Before she could say anything, Minato grabbed the phone and said that it was a misdial. Unfortunately, these freaks caught her. The boys punished her by punching her repeatedly in the face. Miyano burned her ankles with a lighter. They placed her head on the concrete and stomped on it. Then she was forced to drink large amounts of alcohol, milk, and water, smoke 2 cigarettes at once, and inhale paint thinner fumes. This was all for their sick entertainment. At this point, she was unable to hold her bladder and would have accidents. Miyano once stepped on a puddle of urine. Junko was then beaten by the boys. Miyano then burnt her thighs and hands several times with lighter fluid. This is so horrific, it makes me sick. But Junko's story needs to be told. She was at the point where she was just begging for death. Somehow, Junko's torture got worse, if that's possible. She was being fed less and less food, and then eventually just milk. Soon she could not make it down the stairs to use the restroom. Her body was weak. She was disfigured from all the assaults. Her wounds began to emit an odor, so she most likely had infections. They made her eat cockroaches and drink her own urine. She was burned with a cigarette lighter and cigarettes. They even put fireworks in her ears, mouth, and private parts, then set them off. Obviously, she was burned really badly, which they found hilarious. They put a light bulb inside her and it exploded. The fact that she survived all this shows how strong she was. They put other things inside of her, like lit matches, cigarettes, scissors, and roasting skewers. The boys no longer had interest in her sexually. They abused her and tortured her, and when she was no longer attracted to them, they were done. It is reported that over 100 people were involved. Many people reported things inaccurately due to the translation issue. It was more like 17 people assaulted her over 400 times. It's still horrendous, but someone should have spoken up. I did see some source talking about the bystander effect, but I personally think that's a dumb excuse. Sure, it happens, but you see this teenager get tortured and you do nothing, yeah, you're a piece of crap in my book. This led them to find a new victim. They kidnapped a 19-year-old woman who would be their downfall. On January 4th, 1989, the torture of Junko took a deadly turn. Miyano played a game of mahjong the night before, but lost a lot of money. This was another point of misinformation. Many sources said Junko beat him, but she was actually not involved in the game. He played the game, got his little feelings hurt, and then took it out on Junko. He lit a candle, dripped hot wax on her face, and then placed 2 shortened candles on her eyelids. Miyano also forced her to drink her own urine. She was then lifted and kicked. Junko fell on a stereo unit, then went into a fit of convulsions. At this point, her body was decaying and emitted an awful odor, so they put a plastic bag over their hands before beating her with fists, and then an iron exercise ball. They lifted up the ball and dropped it on her abdomen several times. Miyano then set her on fire. Junko attempted to put herself out, but soon stopped moving. The torture lasted about 2 hours. She died at 10 a.m. Minato's brother checked on her, but she looked dead, and she was. This was 24 hours after the assault. They wrapped Junko in a blanket, placed the blanket in a travel bag, then moved the bag in a metal 55-gallon drum and filled it with concrete. Minato actually threw in a videotape of the final episode of her favorite TV show, Tanbo, which she planned to watch the night she was kidnapped. He did this out of fear of her haunting him, not pity or any remorse. On January 5th, around 8 p.m., they drove the drum to a construction site on the island of Wakasu in Kyoto, Tokyo. They left the drum containing poor Junko on a cement truck. On January 23rd, 1989, Miyano and Ogura were arrested for the kidnapping and sexual assault of a 19-year-old woman, which occurred in December 1988. On March 29th, they questioned 2 men when women's underwear were found at their residence when they searched their homes. They mentioned an open murder. Miyano believed that they were talking about Junko, so he confessed and told them where to find her body. The police were confused as they were investigating the murder of a woman and her 7-year-old son. They had no idea that they were tied to the disappearance, now murder of Junko Furuta. But the police just let them talk. They were not involved in the other murder and it still remains unsolved. They recovered the drum containing Junko's body. They were able to identify her using fingerprints. Her face was beaten so badly that she was unrecognizable. She weighed only 97 pounds. One detail I was not aware of before researching was that Junko was actually pregnant. The family was informed upon this information. Junko's mother fainted, may have had to spend time in a psychiatric hospital. I do not even blame her. I would lose it if I had to live with the fact my daughter was tortured and brutalized. Miyano was arrested after his confession on March 29th, 1989. On April 1st, Yukira was arrested for another sexual assault and rearrested for Junko's murder. Next came the assault Minato, Watanabe, Minato's brother, Nakamura, Ahira. The first trial began on July 31st, 1989. Originally, they were going to be tried as juveniles, and the identities were going to be kept hidden. This is because under Japanese law in 1989, you were considered a juvenile if you were under the age of 20. They were referred by letters. Miyano was A, Ogura was B, Minato was C, and Watanabe was D. They, however, did not protect Junko, as her face and name were released everywhere. I'm sure this caused the family a lot of pain. They were tried as adults, though. The trial went into excruciating detail, which, as hard as it is to hear, it is unfortunately necessary to understand the gravity of what Junko went through. There were people who actually fainted from the details. All the boys pleaded guilty to committing bodily injury that resulted in death. On July 20th, 1990, all 4 of the main perpetrators were found guilty of abduction for the purpose of sexual assault, confinement, rape, assault, murder, and the abandonment of a corpse. Miyano was sentenced to 17 years in prison. His parents also sold their home. This was 50 million yen, or $850,000 in today's money. Well, that'll make her parents get over their daughter's brutal rape, torture, and murder. But it came out during court that he had a learning disability, but it, quote, did not impair his brain function, but delayed his emotional development, unquote. Miyano appealed his sentence and was resentenced to 20 years, the harshest sentence in Japan, except for life. Ogura was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. Yeah, I know. Freaking ridiculous. Minato was sentenced to 5 to 6 years, but also appealed and received 9 years. Unfortunately, it looks as though his scumbag parents and brother were not charged. Watanabe was charged for 3 to 4 years in prison. After appealing, he received 5 to 7 years. Nakamura and Ahira were both sentenced to time in juvenile detention for the rape of Junko. They both were released by 2000. They both moved on, got married, and had families, something Junko will never have the chance to do. Apparently, they were open to their spouses about their past, for whatever that is worth. On April 20th, 1989, a Japanese magazine, Shukan Bushan, leaked their names because the men were, quote, inhumane and did not deserve human rights, unquote. There was significant public backlash, so they were tried as adults. They did plead not guilty, although the evidence against them was overwhelming. In 2009, Miyano was released and changed his last name to Yokoyama. He continued to brag about his connections with the Yakuza and pyramid schemes. In 2013, he was arrested on suspicion of bank fraud and placing scam calls, but was never charged. Yukira was released in 1999 when he changed his last name to Kamisaku. He worked in the IT industry and he got married and moved to Chiba Prefecture. He eventually got divorced. He lost his job when people found out his involvement in Junko's torture and murder. He then became involved in the Yakuza again. In 2004, he was arrested for the assault of a 27-year-old named Tagashi Aisano. He thought he was messing with his girlfriend, so he shoved him in his truck, drove him to his mother's bar in Masato, where he assaulted him for 4 hours. Sound familiar? He even told the man that he had killed before and knew how to get away with it. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He was released again in 2009. He lived alone, living off welfare. On July 16th, 2022, at the age of 51, he collapsed and got his head stuck between the toilet bowl and tank. He choked to death on his vomit. It was reported that it was a psychiatric medication. I just think it was karma, and I get a little bit of joy knowing he suffered. Minato was released in 1998 when he moved in with his mother. In 2018, he was arrested for suspicion of murder. He struck a 32-year-old man with a metal baton on the shoulder and slashed his throat with a knife. That was all after a parking spot. In 2019, he was sentenced to 1.5 years with a term of suspended probation for 3 years. His dad said he felt deep shame and wanted to give his life savings to Junko's family, but before he could, Minato took the money and spent it. Oh, his piece of crap mom vandalized Junko's grave and blamed Junko for ruining her son's life. That bitch. He ruined his own life when he murdered Junko. Watanabe appealed his verdict in 1992, but was denied. He was eventually released in 1996 when he moved to Tokyo to stay with his mother, but by 2005, he had developed a neurodegenerative disease. He did not have the money to get it treated. In May 2021, at the age of 49, he died. On April 2nd, 1989, Junko's funeral was held. One of her friends read a eulogy written by her classmates. Jun-chan, welcome back. I never dreamt that we would meet again like this. You were subjected to such cruelty, weren't you? You went through so much, didn't you? I'm upset with myself for going on living, unaware of what was happening. You were always so gentle and cheerful. Jun-chan, the happiness we made for this cultural festival looked wonderful on you. I'll never forget that. We will absolutely not let Jun-chan's death be in vain. As we step into adulthood, we strive for a world where such heinous crimes no longer exist. We'll do our best keeping Jun-chan in our hearts and pushing forward. The principal even brought your diploma. Thanks to this, all 47 of us in class 38 were able to graduate. Jun-chan, there is no more pain or suffering now. Rest peacefully. Farewell, Jun-chan. Unquote. Junko was set to begin that new job before she disappeared. Her future employer presented her uniform to the family, and it was buried with her. The family was present at what would have been her graduation, where they were given her diploma. Her boyfriend did not attend her funeral because it was too difficult for him, and we cannot really blame him for that. He went back to smoking and drinking and to grieve. He said of Junko's murder, quote, I remember their faces, and when they come out, I want to kill them in the same eye, unquote. I mentioned before that Junko's mom had a hard time with what happened. It was reported she was in a psychiatric hospital, but this is not confirmed. The family's very private, which is understandable and is their right. The location where her body was found is now an industrial zone. And now here are my final thoughts. This is a disturbing abduction, rape, and murder of the beautiful, intelligent Junko Furuta. I do not understand that they let every other victim but tortured and killed Junko. This is of course assuming they did not have any other murder victims that we don't know about. It cannot be explained by escalation because while holding Junko captive, they abducted another girl and let her go. I'm thinking it's because her family was fighting so hard and they knew they would not get away with it if they released her. This really pissed me off. The police did not do enough. These freaks assaulted Junko sexually, physically. They held her captive. They mentally broke her down. The worst part is, there's not much Junko could have done to protect herself. I like to find advice to protect us so things like this does not happen. But what if she refused to let Miyano walk her home? What if she fought his assault? What if she tried to run from the evil four freaks in the park? What if she told her parents that she was in danger? She most likely would be dead. The lesson is for the police and Minato's shitty parent. This could have been stopped if the police actually done their job and searched the home. I know some people will think I'm bashing the police, but I will call the police out when they screw up and give them credit when it's due. In this case, they screwed up royally. Now, Minato's parents knew what was going on and are partially responsible. One, they raised a psychopath, but they also said nothing, and is kind of a mother blaming Junko. But thank you so much for listening to Junko's case and remembering her with me today. What do you think about the so-called justice in Junko's case? I want to know your opinion, but please be respectful. If you are a judgmental dick, you will be removed and blocked. Comment, subscribe, and like. If you have any future cases you'd like me to cover, please request them using the form in my description box. You can also put them in the comments. Join me on Freaky Friday when I discuss a UFO abduction, one of the first ones ever talked about, and it's my first UFO abduction coverage, so I'm excited for that. Until next time, stay curious, cautious, and safe. And don't allow your son to torture and murder a girl in your home, then blame the victim for ruining your son's life. Okay, bye.